Clarissa is a novel Stefan Zweig began in the final period of his life. The manuscript, which remained unfinished, was discovered in 1981 and completed by his publisher. The novel narrates the state of the world from 1902 up to the outbreak of World War I, through the eyes of a young woman. Clarissa, the daughter of an Austrian officer, grew up in a convent school. After completing her education, she began working with a renowned Viennese neurologist. At a conference in Lausanne, she met Léonard, a peace-loving French teacher. They fell in love. When the war forced them to part, Clarissa was pregnant. What's more, the father of her child was now considered an enemy. In a shattered Europe filled with nationalist hysteria, giving birth to this child was no longer just a personal decision. Clarissa is a novel that tells the story of World War I from a woman's perspective. Stefan Zweig drafted the manuscript toward the end of his life. Although not all of the sentences belong to Zweig himself, as the novel was completed posthumously by his publisher, it remains a beautiful and significant work. Think of it as the chronological story of Clarissa's life. Now, without going into excessive detail, here is a summary of the book. Clarissa remembered very little about her childhood. She had never truly felt the warmth of a family or a place she could call home. Until the age of 8, she lived in various places with her brother, who was 2 years older. When she turned 8, she was placed in a convent school. She had very few memories from her years at the convent. She believed this was due to her father as method of control. He required her to write daily reports detailing everything she did. This prevented her from living in the moment, as she always tried to write things that would please her father. The only memories Clarissa could clearly recall were from Sundays, when either her father or brother came to visit. Her father was a soldier and always dressed accordingly. When he came to the convent, all eyes turned to him. The same happened when her brother visited. The difference was that while her father maintained a certain distance from others, her brother was more sociable and became the center of attention among the girls. Just before Clarissa was to finish school, her father asked her to leave and come to him. Though she didn't understand why, she trusted that her father had a reason. Her brother picked her up from the train station and they went home together. Her father seemed very tense. He had been asked to resign from the military. He planned to continue his research on war in a civilian capacity elsewhere. For his children, he left a large sum of money and ensured the rent for the house would be paid every month, so they would always have a place to stay if they wished. While her brother continued at military school, Clarissa was unsure of what to do. She didn't want to rush, so she spent a year attending lectures and conferences to develop herself. She found a job through one of these events, working as an assistant to Professor Silberstein. She liked the job and got along well with Silberstein. It was through him that she would eventually meet the love of her life. There were 2 events she had to attend, but because their dates overlapped, she could only choose one. Silberstein asked her to attend the Congress in Lucerne. Clarissa gladly accepted. At first, she struggled. This was her first trip alone. When she arrived in Lucerne, she needed to go to the Congress office to find out where she'd be staying. That's where she met Léonard. He was working at the Congress office and was a very kind man. During the Congress, they sat at the same table. Gradually, a connection began to form between them. Even after the Congress ended, they stayed together. They had a wonderful time, exploring places no one else went to, living in a kind of bubble, disconnected from the outside world. Just as everything was going perfectly, a letter from Clarissa's father disrupted their happiness. He wrote that he had been called back to duty. This was a sign that war was imminent. They both had to return to their respective countries, one to Germany, the other to France. It was uncertain when or if they would ever see each other again. After a sorrowful farewell, the war began. While her brother went to the front, Clarissa worked in the medical service. The war was far harsher than anyone had anticipated, and Clarissa was constantly working. As if things weren't hard enough, she learned that her brother had died and that she was pregnant. She went to Professor Silberstein for help. Initially, her aim was to terminate the pregnancy, but by the end of their conversation, She had decided to keep the baby. Though she was carrying the child of an enemy, she still wanted to give birth. She later married someone she didn't love for the sake of her child, but she was never happy in that relationship. She also never learned whether Leonard was still alive or had already perished.